It's fair to say the 3 days of official mourning is over. However, we are still very much in a state of grief as a country. Obviously, we have this unprecedented tragedy that has befallen us with the death of 2 cabinet ministers and 6 others. The funeral is this very Friday, but there are big questions that we must begin to now answer, especially now that investigations have started into what really happened. Let's settle and let's begin to ask those hard questions, because one of the things we must say to ourselves, never again. And if we're going to say never again, then we must ask ourselves the hard questions quickly and find solutions and build back better as far as we handle and deal with such emergencies are concerned. A few things went wrong, and we'll go into greater detail as far as that is concerned. But where are we tonight? The black box, thank goodness, has been retrieved, because overnight, we know the authorities left the scene unsecured until 24 hours later, and anything could have happened, but they managed to secure the black box, so that is good. Forensic analysts, we know, have now completed. The bodies have been analyzed. We now know the various individuals from the analysis, even that itself, we didn't have the capacity to do it here, to fly it abroad, and a few additional forensic work still remains to be done. We also know that board of inquiry have now been set up to look into this. There are questions about the board and its terms of reference. One of my guests will pose those questions. The Armed Forces and the Civil Aviation Authority, we understand, are on site. The Civil Aviation Authority is an interesting one because they have a very elaborate rescue manual that should have governed the immediate aftermath of the flight going down or getting lost from the radar. Was that activated? Is a fundamental question we'll ask tonight and seek some answers to. We also know that there is a cash reward now because the crash site was not properly secured. In fact, it wasn't secured. Residents who had, some of them had just gone in there to try and help, contaminated the site, and they took away some of the very vital parts of the aircraft, which will be crucial to the investigations. And as a result of which, a cash reward was offered for people to bring these items back for a reward. As we speak tonight, we know that many have returned the items, and that is a good thing. The research team here have been doing some analysis, because you remember that we had a reporter at the scene, the first reporter at the scene. What we did was to take coordinates of the crash site, and this is what we've used for this analysis. Now, we know from the Ghana Armed Forces' own statement that the flight left Accra at 12 minutes past 9, right? And it would have taken, if you calculate the journey time to the venue of the anti-Galamsey event where we had a reporter, it would have taken a short, 1 hour to get to his destination, which is what you have there. Should have arrived at 10:12. If you left here at 10:12, should arrive at 10:12, right? The estimated time of 1 hour. We know that didn't pan out exactly that, because at 10:12, the scheduled arrival time, that didn't pan out as we know. It was just before 2 that the Ghana Armed Forces issued a statement and told us that they've lost their aircraft, the helicopter, on their radar. That is 3 hours later. That is not to suggest that that was a time that they discovered this. They would have known for quite a while, hours before we all knew that something had gone wrong. It's not possible that they didn't see it gone off radar until 3 hours later. They knew this. The question is, when did they discover that it's gone off radar, and did they trigger the very elaborate rescue protocols that the document that we're going to be talking about talks about and lays out the uncertainty period, the distress period? Did they activate all those very important elements of that? And if they did, what did they really do in terms of the actions that must be taken once you render that assessment? So that's a key thing that we'll be asking. And then around 2:20 thereabout, the government confirms that we've had fatalities in this particular crash. So that's the trajectory of things that happened. Now, we know that the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority search protocol is something that we had put in place. It has been revised. 1st of November 2008 was there. The first thing they needed to do, if they were activating this, was no communication with aircraft within 30 minutes, you activate, right? That's the first thing you should have done. The aircraft has failed to arrive within 30 minutes of ETA. Again, you need to begin putting this in place to search, locate, rescue, if you can, very immediately. Also, we know that investigations team, though, in spite of the very strict timelines for taking action, nobody arrived there in terms of the proper forensic investigations team to secure the crash site until after 24 hours. And we saw the videos. They arrived there sometime in the morning, the day after the crash, and military men in uniform, some of them with the cameras, and of course cameras were you're needed when you're doing forensic, crash site forensics, talking about to move in. They didn't even go in military vehicles completely. So questions obviously all over. We took way too long to get there to the site when a journalist walked hours in there with the first, not call them first responders, just, farmers who wanted to help, right? So that is a very critical gap there, and we need to look at why that happened. And then if you look at the map here, the Ghana Air Force bases that we know, there are few of them. There's one in Takoradi, we had one in Accra, Josie, we had one in Tamale, right? So which one was closest, and which one obviously had resources to deploy for the search? It's a big question. I mean, that we need to ask. Of course, this middle belt here is quite empty. It's a question that, again, we've asked. Is it time now to look at positioning the Ghana Air Force properly to deal with emerging threats and distress moments like this? Past incidents, plenty of them. Plenty of past incidents involving Ghana Air Force helicopters. So this is not, unfortunately, an isolated incident. We've known for a while that our aircraft that we have outmoded. We need to retool the Ghana Air Force, but we haven't done so, right? For whatever reason, it hasn't been done. But you can count so many of them all the way 2015 to 20. I can just go through it for you. There's so many of them that we've had. False landings, crashes, you had them all. And this obviously is the most devastating, if you like. The gravity of it, the individuals involved, it shook the nation to its core, but it's been coming, if you like. As painful as it is for you to say that, it's been coming. We know that the aircraft was not one. It's been too long. The service condition, it raises a lot of questions. My guest will join me. This is just one part of it. There are many areas of this investigation that needs to be looked at. And as a country, we need to be asking ourselves those hard questions. The reason why this has happened, many will tell you, is because when all these incidents happened in the past, what did we do? What did we do to ensure that this didn't happen? What did we do? It's a fundamental question. This time, as I said at the beginning, we must tell ourselves, never again. Never again. My guest will join me for a conversation. Stay with me. And thank you for staying with us here on PM Express. Very hard questions might be asked. And if we really want to say never again, we must really mean it. And so let's ask the questions tonight. PMS is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough, academic times, Pepsodent Cavity Fighter toothpaste. And if you want to talk about tanks, you must talk about Syntex Tanks. You know the secret to real water storage. It's simple. If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it is not the correct tank. Join the Syntex Tank family today and enjoy water storage that's tough like a tortoise. 0244-335-168 to buy now or find one of our 400 agents nationwide. You can also shop online at syntexga.com. It is strong, it is tough. The Academic Times Journal is launching soon with 3 distinctive graphic publications and a journal to showcase and empower students across all educational levels. While the journal and the tertiary GE seeks to ensure that tertiary students' research makes an impact by contributing to institutional and national development. And of course, if you are sleeping tonight, make sure you use Pepsodent Cavity Fighter to brush your teeth before you do, because as you know, sugar strap in your teeth can cause gum decay. Brushing your teeth every morning and night with Pepsodent Cavity Fighter gives your teeth the protection they need, leaving you with 10 times stronger teeth. Pepsodent, every smile matters. My guest joining me tonight, Bryce Simmons is the Vice President of Imani Africa. Professor Paul Opoku Sampene-Osei is a forensic pathologist. Colonel Festus Sogbodjor, retired, is security analyst, and Wing Commander Patrick Nelson Sogbodjor is retired, is with the Ghana Force. And I'm grateful that all of you gentlemen can join us. And Brian, I want to start with you on this. The questions have been asked, rightfully. You put up a post and you pulled up a document that many have suspected must exist, indeed existed. You dusted it up. What did you find?
So, first of all, because Imani has been doing some work around the forward operating basis projects of the armed forces, a lot of their budget is classified. It's very difficult. It's been a very long-standing project. We've become quite familiar with some of the issues in the military, and that includes the Air Force. So naturally, this matter was of interest when it happened. And given that I also have an ICT background, and maybe half of the problems that, as I will subsequently explain, are ICT-oriented, I took a very deep interest. So the first thing I tried to understand was the institutional architecture when an incident like this occurs. And then the second is to try and see what is the sequencing of actions based on the protocols that exist. So if you look at Ghana, we have, of course, the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, but it's primarily for civil aircraft. And this is a military aircraft. In that same regard, we also have an accident investigation and prevention bureau. But the funny thing is that in our law, which is the Act 1048 and the regulations 2483, it is not automatic that the Accident Investigation and Prevention Bureau takes over an investigation of this nature. It must be specifically requested by the minister. So if this had been, Africa World Airlines or some other civil craft that was involved, the institutional framework is very simple. The AIB has plenary powers to just get in and you have total control, what we call unhinged control, in terms of access, evidence preservation, investigation, etc., etc. The way that, and that is obviously Annex 13 of the Chicago Convention, which is ICAO. But when it comes to a situation like this, where state aircraft is involved, whether it's the police, customs, whatever, and certainly the military, then that institutional framework doesn't automatically kick in. So the AIB is not automatically responsible. What is true, though, is what I posted, which is that we have the International Aeronautical and Maritime Search and Rescue Manual, and the Annex 12 also of the Chicago Convention, which is a separate annex, that detail how you do search and rescue in your country. And even though it's voluntary, most countries have aligned. I think in the military in Ghana, there is a tendency to, in my view, to rely on IMSA. But the difference is that, unlike, say, the UK, which has a dedicated defense investigation accidents board for the military, I don't see the equivalent of the same kind of institutional setup where we have a dedicated unit in the Ghana Armed Forces that does investigation linked to search and rescue. So that's where the complexity begins. So if you see what the government has done, they've set up an ad hoc investigative board as opposed to relying on a specific unit within the military or something like that. Now, then I posted, then moved away. So I didn't dwell a lot on the institutional architecture, but that was relevant. It moves into what will then happen if you think of the engineering aspect of things. So you have an aircraft, it's flying from Accra to Obuasi, has a flight path, like you said, but there's also ground radar, and it has a transponder that's often pinging the ground radar or, both ways. And then at some point, the ground radar loses track. And air traffic control must have done a log that we can't find this craft. So to me, that's a starting point, which is there's a missing aircraft incident at some point on the way. Then it's supposed to be, I think, it's an hour or so journey. I have to double check that.
Yeah, I know.
An hour journey.
It left here at 9:12, according to the Ghana Armed Forces.
Very good.
Should have been there at 10:12.
Good. So it doesn't get to the destination aerodrome. That reinforces the fact that you have a lost aircraft.
Yeah.
Okay. The second thing that is of relevance is that now the craft crashes, as we now know. And there it gets a bit interesting. For a VVIP craft of this nature, which is also a military craft, the tendency is to think that there will be an emergency location transmitter in there somewhere. In fact, Ghana is now trying to move to what we call GATS, the Global Aeronautical Distress Signaling Mechanism. It's a kind of standard framework, which actually we're supposed to have moved to that in 2023. So it's the latest in that. But way before that, you had a framework that embeds beacons in the craft. It's been there for many, many decades. And what happens is that it sends the signals genuinely, right? There is a COSPAS SASAT program about a couple of countries with a lot of satellite assets have built a framework which countries like Ghana have joined. And we have an RCC in Ghana and a single point of contact that enable, and then we also subscribe to a number of MCCs, mission control organizations, one in Nigeria, one in South Africa, one in the UK. And I think the one in the UK is the one that I've seen, most of the documents that I've reviewed active. So the beacon activates on either on impact or whatever mechanism has been set up. That would be your ideal kind of scenario. It sends a signal to the satellite that is relayed through the mission control, and it gets to the RCC. In Ghana, the RCC is managed by the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority because that flight information region, that whole sector, which covers the whole country, that is where the SPOC sits. So the ideal situation is that signal gets sent, it's a distress signal, and then if it's automated, because there's no human beings in this case to operate it, right? So if it's automated and it's set up that upon impact, it should switch on, it sends that information to the satellite, it sends it back through the RCC. And then you activate your National Search and Rescue Protocol, which is where you inform all the key actors that are in the space. Okay, but assume that didn't work. If for some reason, either because the aircraft is not set up in that way on the rest, there are other frequencies and other devices which are more personal, in inverted commas, that allows you to do more like a local beacon signaling effect. So that if people are searching around the locality, they can detect that and they can go there. From the investigations that we've done, and obviously nobody's willing to speak on record and the likes of it, many of these expectations were not met, as in some of these expected protocols were not activated, which is why if you realize, and we saw all of these being broadcast live on social media, there was more or less not a coordinated search and rescue for many hours. It was later that local authorities, because villagers in the area had gone there and sent information, moved onto the scene. Now, the concern that some of us have is that when you look at the IAMSA, the International Aeronautical and Maritime Search and Rescue Manual, which Ghana uses, and it's very clear in terms of preserving evidence. So site control and access is really critical. And there's no doubt, we all saw it on TV, that the standard protocol of trying to secure access was not met. Now, the argument that has been made is that, obviously, you had a situation where access was already difficult, and certain people had got there earlier. But when you think of the time, you look at our response manual, the time factor, it's quite surprising, in my view, that it took so long for the military to get to site and try and make an effort, even if they couldn't get there as early as they could, to get there and try and preserve evidence.
They got there 24 hours later.
Exactly.
I mean, the first officials who got there was the Deputy Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator, who got there around 3 o'clock.
Yes.
How do I know? Because my reporter trailed them and got there around 4.
Yeah.
4:30 thereabout, and then got that interview where he then confirmed they retrieved the bodies, and then he saw. So he got there first. So he was the first, and he got there with some NADMO officials, also some police officers there.
So at that time, you begin to see some emergence of protocol activation in the sense that NADMO is there. And that is one of the key actors in our protocol. Okay. So the second thing then becomes, okay, regardless of what the situation is, the Ghana Armed Forces is designed for rapid response. We have threats in the region. Obviously, some of them Sahelian. But if you go to Nigeria, part of the fight with Boko Haram was in the Sambisa forest. So we cannot assume that the military that we have, if the place is a forest, cannot engage. Their tactical training, all of the capabilities that they have, include being able to operate in that terrain.
In fact, Ghana has one of the best jungle warfare schools in the world. I'll come to you now, please. I'll come to you shortly.
My view of the matter is, theoretical lecture. Of course, but the truth of the matter is that we have to express our position on the matter.
Yeah. But let people who are close to it, and all what you said, theoretically is true.
But that's what we are
emergencies are emergencies.
Yes. We are starting from what should be the ideal picture, and then we are moving to what happened. And then if you can fill us in.
What kind of ideal picture are you looking at?
Because there are rules.
There are rules.
There are manuals.
Flying in local area doesn't have, ICAO and they don't have authority on them.
Who doesn't have authority?
Or ICAO and the rest, all these organs.
But I'm not saying they have authority. I'm saying they have standards which we conform
with. But have the Ghana Air Force fallen below the standards?
That's what we are getting to. So let's describe what
I'm describing this as a former pilot, and I'm telling you what we see.
Good. Okay. So you are going to fill us in with why those ideal standards were not met, which I guess is...
Let's summarize one after the other one. I'll go up on it.
Okay.
An aircraft is prepared First of all, a tax order comes from whoever is requesting a flight. And it goes to the Air Force. And they look at the kind of air support you need and which platform can perform that. That platform is selected before the aircraft is pushed out from hangar. The ground crew will do all the tests they have to do. Then it's up to the squadron to appoint who is going to fly it. That person should have the requisite qualifications to fly that aircraft from point A to point B. They will not put unqualified person to go and fly. We have classes, license A, B, C, D. Whether we have all flight, weather, master, we have them all. And these VIP flights, Ghana Air Force has been doing for years. We've lost 2 helicopters with considerable number of people, 7 and 8. We lost the Beaver aircraft with 8. Accidents happen all over where there's aviation. It is so that maybe when an accident happens, they will go and pull a book and say, you should have done this, C, and B.
Actually, that's what we do.
That's
what we do.
You do outside. I have been involved in aircraft.
But I've also read the reports of investigations.
You have read, but they have trained.
We cannot assume that
listen. They have trained officers
because they have
gone on courses on these investigations. Yeah. But first of all, it's locate where the crash is. That's the first thing you have to do. And we forget that this accident happened in a heavily forested area. If as soon as they lost control of it, we don't even have the beacons from here to Boise.
But what does the manual say? Which is
the manual what is it? And then a pilot
and the
comes
reason why
in.
investigations are conducted.
I'm not saying there shouldn't be.
We shouldn't.
A flight is giving
create the impression that these matters don't have any standards and therefore it's all a matter of practicality. I'm saying that there are rules.
But the question is it the first time a plane has been down either in Ghana or elsewhere?
But in each of them we make an investigation, right?
Right. I'm telling you the procedure. You know, you are giving me a flight, you do your plan. And there are separation heights from every obstacle. If your plan is okay, you know your takeoff time and arrival time. This thing happened in Mayday, and we are saying that where it happened was a very heavy set area. You can't drop soldiers to go there. Are you going to drop a parachute that they hang on trees?
So if you have an insurgency in that forest, how are we going to deal with the insurgency?
Ground forces are part of it. They should get there. And it took them almost 2 hours.
No, but I don't understand your point. Please explain. You say we cannot send troops there because you say you cannot send troops there.
How do you send the troops there? How do you take them there?
No, that's what I'm asking the question.
How do you take them there?
Relax. If we had an insurgency in that forest, how would we act as a country?
You have to move soldiers from point A to point B.
Yes,
so the soldiers are not scattered all over Ghana.
No. What I'm saying is that we can move soldiers there.
You are talking about an ideal situation. And I'm telling you that it takes time or took time for the ground, about 1.5 hours. They still hadn't gotten to the crash site. And for them to go there and indicate where the airplane landed. You talk about transponder. This is a transponder issue.
I didn't say transponder.
You mentioned it.
That was on the radar issue, not the beacon in the craft. It has not to do with the transponder. If it's flying, the transponder communicates with the radar.
All aircraft are purchased by users. It depends what you want to put in the aircraft. They are not standardized. What are you saying? I am not saying that. You are saying you should have this and that. I say no. It depends what you want to push in the aircraft.
Okay, so are you saying that this craft didn't have the transponder for radar contact or not? I'm not sure I understand your analysis.
You don't understand. Have you checked on the Air Force whether they have it or not?
Yeah, but that's why we are describing an ideal situation. And then you tell us what is there.
I mentioned that it's ideal situation. But what happened is one of Autocor, where it crashed, were heavily forested area. So even they knew that after the flight should have been, let's say, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. Now, after 20 minutes, we don't hear from you. Immediately, the button is pushed. But to get to the site.
No, so let's address that. Let's come to that.
I'm talking about if the aircraft helicopter had a transponder.
What we want to tell us is that this is the ideal, but this was not there at that time. So if you say the crowd didn't have a transponder,
I can't tell.
If you can't, then we have to assume what is the framework.
I have been there before, and I'm telling you how it is.
So how it is asking what? As the crowd don't have the transponder.
You mean all aircraft have transponder?
No, I'm just asking about this specific one.
Your question.
This is a VIP.
It doesn't matter. It's an aircraft belonging to the state. I didn't say all of them should have transponder.
No, I'm saying that this is a VIP helicopter. Did they have it or not? That's what I'm
I don't know. I wasn't
so
listening, but you also can assume.
Yes, then we can
You
describe
also
what
can
would
assume.
have
So
happened.
give me a chance to describe it.
Okay,
Yeah.
This is a theoretical discussion we have.
Wing
Please.
No, but
Commander.
the theoreticals are important too.
And Bryce, I'll come to you to end the point. But Wing Commander, a few questions, and I'm asking this
yes.
just like every citizen is
But I think
asking.
Wing Commander shouldn't suppress the discussion.
Why-
Yeah.
why- why-
Brian, I'll come to you.
I describe my approach.
You also
let
can
me
do
have mutual
You have
respect.
no sadness.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that I don't do
I'll quit in a minute.
No, you don't. Don't do that. Don't do that
Yeah.
yet. We are here to understand
I'm
what
not a
happened.
PRO for the Air
No,
Force.
you're not. Yeah, I
I
haven't
just
suggested
want
so.
public to know what had happened.
Exactly. So let's walk through.
So
Let's
don't
walk
let
through that.
push all the theoretical things that this is what should have happened.
No,
that's a
but to be
starting point for
fair,
analysis.
yeah, he was giving us what the protocols say as they
What
sign on to,
protocols?
and then
What
you
are
come
the
to what
protocols that
reality.
he's saying?
Let's
From the
come
time
to
the tax order comes out,
Yes.
VIPs are going here. The Air Force give the required or the requisite aircraft to go. Pilots are selected. Ground crew have checked the aircraft. They certify that you can fly.
Yeah.
A pilot goes in, you do the standard checks. It's okay with you. Okay, you go in before you even start the aircraft.
It's all checked.
You do your pre-start checks.
I think for those we
So
understood
all
clearly that
those
was done in
was
check.
done before you
Let's
took
go.
off.
There's something you said that I want to just understand. When it was determined that the aircraft had gone down, right? We got wind of it around 12 o'clock. In fact, 11:30 is when I got the first call. It was definitely the public, even journalists knew. But we dispatched our reporter around 1 to start heading there. And we knew the site at the time, right? You talked about the military trying to get to the site.
The first point of call, the military and police, they would tell them. No,
But
I don't think your
my
reporter got there before the military got there.
But that's my point I'm making.
Yes.
You satisfied with the response that the security setup gave
Assuming
to
these
what we have?
aircraft are taking place in savannah area or in a desert, very simple to get there. But I'm talking about a heavy forested area, trees about 80 feet or 100 feet. And there are villages in the forest, but you can't see them from the top. People have to go there, and they were cutting their way. It took them about 1.5 to 2 hours to get to the site. And at the first point of call, they've gotten the cordon.
They didn't cordon until 24 hours later.
No. Wait a minute.
That wasn't cordon until 24 hours later.
Cordon the area, the most important thing was that the plane was down.
Yeah.
The police were there with the army, with the military, and they were able to cordon.
But they didn't cordon up
What is
until
the
24
cordon going
hours
to
later.
protect the aircraft and take the casualties out? That's immediate search and rescue.
But a few facts.
Like what?
The cordon didn't happen until 24 hours later.
Why do you put a cordon to do what?
To preserve the scene of the crash for investigators.
Yes.
It's part of the reason why items were taken, because it took so long and didn't cordon up until
It took so
very
long
late.
because there was no access road to get there. And I'm saying they had to cut their way through the forest to get there.
Okay.
And it took them almost 2 hours to get there.
Okay, so just a second, Bright, you were making
I think
your
we have to
point
set
as well.
some ground rules. Our purpose here is not to perform an inquiry. Our purpose here is to have a conversation that listeners who may not have all the details may also be informed. So in the process, you've decided to impanel people with a different perspective. And that is the whole point. The conversation should proceed with the view that we have different legitimate perceptions about what happened. Where one panelist feel like that is somehow illegitimate on another part of the panel to have another event because he comes from a different perspective, I don't think we have a conversation. So I would really ask Wing Commander Sogbodjor to accept that I'm here because I have a different perspective. And let's just have a conversation.
And we also have
The second
other
point,
guests
so
on the
basically
conversation,
saying that everything I'm saying is theoretical and is to be dismissed is not the right way to proceed with the conversation. Now, going back to what we are saying, 3 things. One is that every time there's an accident, there's an investigation, and a very elaborate investigation everywhere in the world, including Ghana. The reason is that the assumption is there shouldn't be an accident. That is really the safety maximum. So if there is an accident, there has to be a detailed, thorough investigation trying to understand whether or not the procedures and the rest of it were followed. And that is after the no-blame investigation. So you do a no-blame investigation where you're just trying to find out what happened. The second phase, in which case you may decide to coordinate with the judicial authorities, is where we prosecuted people for doing things that were not the right way to do things. Thirdly, there's a reason why we have a search and rescue manual in this country and internationally. I accept that those are not legal, the international ones are not legally binding on Ghana. But we've subscribed to the Chicago Convention. And in the Chicago Convention, in specific annexes, as well as in the IAMSA that I mentioned, are ways in which you do search and rescue. Now, if you say that, yes, those are ideal standards, and therefore sometimes in the practice of actually doing search and rescue, you respond to local conditions, I understand. But when you say we shouldn't even touch on them, then I have a problem.
I never said
I think we should start with that.
Said that.
Explain that.
Don't drive this conversation. I never said what you are saying. Okay. I never say so.
Okay.
Don't drive
assume it's a hypothetical person
yes.
I'm referring to. So we have to start off with saying what are the rules that are established globally and in this country. And I'm saying that for a search and rescue operation, there are response times. There are designated first responders. There are rules around trying to make sure you have site containment. There are rules around trying to preserve evidence. You mentioned coordinate, preventing unauthorized access. These are all rules that we all saw on TV were not met. Now, the argument is that the terrain was difficult. My response to that is that, of course, the terrain was difficult. Some of the training that the armed forces received, or members of the armed forces received, is specifically so they can operate in difficult terrain. Because we know, for instance, that in Nigeria, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Benin, all some of these conflicts that we've seen, that bad actors tend to use terrain masking to prevent easy response, right? So in Nigeria, in the case of the famous Sambisa forest matter, that is where they were hiding, in the forest. So if you don't train your soldiers so they can go into the forest and respond to a situation, then how are you going to do that? So when you say that, because of the fact that the place was a forest and the rest of it, a 24-hour site containment plan is reasonable, I beg to differ. I think that we have soldiers that if that situation was an insurgency, for instance, we will expect that they will respond quicker. So that's just one point. The second point, and I think that is also quite important, talking about the site containment situation, is that, okay, so all of these situations happen, and we're asking about how quickly we got soldiers to get there. And in our review, what we discovered when we're looking at the forward operating bases is that in Ghana, you have three main Air Force bases, Accra, Takoradi, and Tamale. For a very long time, military strategists have understood that the middle belt of the country is not well covered. Because the middle belt of the country is not well covered, initially we wanted to put a full base in Atebubu. We couldn't really get the resource and the rights. In the end, what we ended up doing was put a tactical command in Bui. And they are trying to put additional forward operating bases, I think also near Bole Bamboy and the rest. My argument, and some of the other analysts we've spoken to in the course of our research, is that some of these forward operating bases where you don't have the full complement of resources to deploy might not make sense. And that is a policy position. And that it might be much more sensible to look at a place like Kumasi, to make sure that you put air resources in Kumasi, so that when there is something like this, you have enough troops to move there, whether they are paratroopers or whatever it is, that you can make sure you can have site access. So some of these conversations, in our view, are important policy conversations to have. In a situation where we have an Air Force that, as I recall, I think their inventory is about 20 helicopters, about 10 are in service. If that is correct, you don't have enough planes. If you look at how long it takes for a new craft to be procured, for a helicopter, it can easily be 2 years once you made the order and the rest of it. So we don't have enough craft. We don't have a budget for it. It takes time to procure them. Specification conversations themselves can prolong the time frame. Why are you not concentrating on a couple of major bases that give you coverage? Because they're a big country. So these are some of the...
Are we here for discussing this incident, or we're talking about a policy which maybe the Ghana Air Force should have?
That's what I'm going to.
Two different things.
That's what I'm going to. I'm going to the specifics.
I came here because the accident issue, that's what I came.
Yes. But
what should be in place, the normal planes they should have, is the need.
Yeah.
And whether the government can afford it.
That's
first, a different subject.
Let's first
but we are looking at the root cause.
But
not just of the incident, but also the search and rescue.
I'll open it up.
I got the wrong
Wing Commander, before I bring your colleague, Colonel Festus Sogbodjor, who is also retired, into the committee, I just want to ask you, in the Air Force, for example, right, when something like this happens, what does the, as you call it, the standard operating protocols
you know
dictate?
What? This is not the first time Ghana Air Force plane has come down.
Yeah.
I was training to fly jet fighters. There were 12 of us. We came back to Ghana within 6 months, lost half. And any time there's an incident, it's a board of inquiry. It's automatic to find out the cause of the aircraft. This particular incident, what I've been bugging is what happened for him to lose his altitude and comes down so low to hit an obstacle. This is where we should find out, but that we find out only from the black box.
You're certain that it must have hit an obstacle?
It did. I mean, if you crash, helicopter can't suspend in the air forever. I mean, the rotors give you the power. And if the power is not enough, you descend. And if you descend in such an area, you're going to run into the forest. It's automatic.
So you're saying there's possibly something mechanical may happen, weather-wise?
Something, but why did they lose height to come down? And then we're talking about time frame, which is not 1 hour, 30 minutes. You're sitting in a cockpit, and then you are not getting what you should get. The plane is coming down. You are busily looking for, in the helicopter, or maybe you could push the aircraft.
Yeah.
But in a heavy forested area, I'm sure if there were to be some school park somewhere, he would have gone there. But seconds. These things happen in seconds. I'll give you another example. In 1969, a plane took off from Takoradi, going to Kumasi to go and spray Barakesi Dam because water hasn't recovered. The flight commander climbed out to 5,000 feet and realized that he was in clouds. So he asked permission to come down to 3,000. During the descent, we also lost contact with him. And mobile phones are not come to Ghana. So we use the village radio transmitters that if anybody has heard, because we checked Kumasi, it hasn't landed, Obuasi, Sunyani hasn't. So somewhere we lost the aircraft. So we use the radio system to announce to people that if you heard a noise somewhere or something like that, please report. You know, our search and rescue took us to Sunyani. It took us 5 days. The last day that we were going to call off the search, flying back to Takoradi, we found a wing right on a very tall tree. You know, that means it crashed there.
In this specific case, though,
yes,
the reports of the crash started filtering through the public around 12.
But if we didn't get to the Air Force upstream,
but that shouldn't be possible, right? Because if
they have to activate it.
Well, that's why there's a national search and rescue manual.
They will
that's the whole
activate
point.
the closest military, this Kumasi,
yeah,
or maybe police in Obuasi. And they are saying that it took them some time to be able to get the crash scene. In the meantime, the villages around, which you can see from the top, had seen the scene. And they did what they did, whether it was professional or not.
So that's an important point. So how then do you explain why, in spite of the military being dispatched that same day, they actually go there and secure the site 24 hours later?
No. They were there. Within 2-3 hours,
I'm talking about
there.
securing the site. The team that went there, in fact, our interview with the deputy commander of the security for Ashanti region said they were expecting the crew who actually come and secure and do the investigation 24 hours later.
Which crew?
The military crew. In fact, we actually recorded this.
I'm telling you, they have to activate them from Kumasi.
But my
they
point
have
is,
to drive.
The fact that you know is
yes,
the military investigation team that actually went there to secure the site only got there and did so 24 hours later. How do you explain that?
This hour I can't answer these things. You know, I'm not.
Well, the point is that
but I'm just
the reason
that
why there are manuals before incidents is to give us a framework to evaluate actions after the fact.
Give me a second. I want to bring in
but let me just
so we shouldn't dismiss the manuals and say, because we are practical constraints, the manuals are
let me just address
I think that's a very important issue.
He wants to address a manual.
You know, which manual are you talking about?
There is a National Search and Rescue Manual.
Yes.
By GCAA.
Yes.
They have the responsibility.
The GCAA depends a lot on the Ghana Air Force. So go ahead.
Let me make my point.
Yes.
And those manuals are, on the basis of collaboration, utilized in the whole country.
Yes.
There is an international aeronautical and maritime manual, which also sets a high bar.
But this outside our territorial boundaries. Well, let's relate
we are signatories to the convention. We are signatories to the convention.
We also know, I'm saying that in each country,
yes,
you have your own rules.
True, but you build
I'm saying
on
that let's relate and come back.
What is the point of being signatory to an international convention if you don't intend to follow?
They don't govern you. But
they provide the
framework. Give me a second. I want to bring in.
Let's relate this thing back to the
I want to bring in Colonel Festus Sogbodjor into the conversation.
But it's not only a pilot that is responsible for this matter.
Wing Commander Bright, just give me a second.
Even pilots are not that should be responsible for this matter.
Give me a second, Bright, and Wing Commander. Let me bring in Colonel Festus Sogbodjor, retired, who is also with us. He obviously has followed all that happened. Thankfully, a lot of this was live. And so we saw it. And the reason why this conversation is important is that we must say as a country that we don't want to repeat this. We must learn the lessons if there are lessons to be learned and ensure that we put in place measures, real actionable steps to ensure that it doesn't recur. Based on your assessment, we had a lot of time now to look at the facts as we know it. Based on your assessment, on your experience in the Ghana Armed Forces, what's your own reading of the way this incident in the immediate aftermath was handled? One, securing the site, two, the search and rescue efforts, all which would have fed into the quality investigations that you expect after an incident like that.
First, good evening to your good self, to my senior friend, Wing Commander, and my very learned friend, Bright. Let me express once again sincere condolences to all of us and the bereaved family. Now, I might have indicated already on Newsfile that I'm writing a paper. So the information that I have is a bit different from some of the points that are being put across, including by Evans. What is clear to me is that 14 minutes after the heli took off at 0912, it went off radar. My wing commander will explain to us technically that when a plane is off radar, it does not mean that it is lost. It is just that the radar cannot find it. So in this case, maybe the Z9 was flying below 1,000 feet, thereabout, based on what radars were operating at any material time. The ETD or ETA was 10:02, not 10:12. You should have taken the heli 50 minutes, all things being well, to have arrived at Obuasi. So when it went off radar, the air traffic controllers, both at Civil Aviation and the Air Force, were going by international practice, waiting for 30 minutes to lapse, and if they had not heard from the plane.
And the 30 minutes is important because I saw that in the manual that we've all been reading today.
Yes.
That governs
and then
the response.
Another 30 minutes, 1 hour. So by 11:12 thereabout, that was when the distress call was placed. And I have information that the Ghana Air Force called Central Command and asked them or told them that we're expecting this helicopter to have landed at Obuasi by so and so time. Do you have any wind of it? Can you, if you like, look for it? Now, what the GOC Central Command did was then to contact the 4BN forward operating base at Obuasi, that this plane was scheduled to land at Longley Stadium. So if by that time they had not seen the plane, then they should go to the AGC Stadium to see perchance whether it had landed. In the course of time, the news started filtering out. Remember, we are talking of 1,100 hours plus. So the general officer commanding, in addition to deploying the FOB to look for the plane in and around Obuasi, as a commanding officer of 4BN, to now deploy a search and rescue team. It's on record, the record that I have shows that the search and rescue team deployed by 4 Infantry Battalion got to the crash site by 1400 hours. Now remember that the eyewitnesses who saw the plane crash saw it much, much, much earlier.
Yeah.
Around 09:53, 55, the plane had crashed. The locals who were in the forest had seen it. They had started moving to the crash site and had started taking away broken parts and so on, which are critical exhibits. So in this case, you cannot fault, let's say, the security services because of distance. Indeed, compared to Atiwa, which took 3 days to find the crash site, this crash site was found the same day you and I were here when the coffins arrived in the night of the 6th.
Yeah.
Unless maybe I'm confused. Again, you remember on Newsfile I said, look, under this circumstance, a second helicopter should have been deployed to try and identify or locate the crash site. Indeed, the second helicopter, the Mi-17, which was positioned at Tamale to support Operation Maidaburi, that is Boko crisis issues, was directed or tasked to move to Kumasi, which it did. Then another plane, fixed wing, the CASA 125 transport plane, left Accra with the investigation team. Now that CASA 125, which sent the investigation team on the same 6th of August, was the one that returned with the coffins. However, given the time that it took from 14, in fact, as I said, the military got to the scene 1400 hours. The regional minister got to the scene at about 1500 hours with the fire service, with the police service, national ambulance service. Given the time that it took to find all the body parts, remember, we are not talking about full bodies. We have been very diplomatic to say we have found bodies. But they were largely body parts that were being pulled from, call it the slope or the ditch. It took time. The regional minister had also intended that if it was possible, they should find the black box. Now, that was when nightfall caught up with them. So therefore, when it became obvious that the site had been found, it was no longer necessary for the Mi-17 to fly into the air. The original idea was to locate and then, if necessary, to now use a winch or whatever to lift the bodies into the plane, Mi-17 Russian, and fly them directly to Accra. So under the circumstance, they had to bring the bodies, as we know, and the conditions that some of us are saying was not dignifying, in the ambulances, contrary to practice, but you can put dead bodies into ambulances, provided that after that, you sanitize the ambulances. So that was what was done. Central Command had deployed 2 military ambulances, one of which I'm told was recently directed to be sent to Kumasi by the CDS on his visit when the command said, oh, we don't have enough ambulances. So the 2 military ambulances plus one from National Ambulance Service 3 were the ambulances that were used to return the bodies, if you like, to the airport, where the CASA 125 that had brought the investigation team was waiting to now take the bodies, transfer them from the sacks into proper body bags, and then into the aircraft. Indeed, the coffins that we saw in Accra were all arranged during the flight. The bodies were put in the coffins on the flight. The Ghana flags were draped, or the coffins were draped with the Ghana flags during the flight. So these are some of the circumstances. It is not very accurate that the search team didn't get there in good enough time. Indeed, we are thankful that the villagers or the locals helped in identifying the crash site, although in some instances, they have also contaminated and disturbed the crash site, which will make the work of the investigators difficult. Then again, we need to note that the investigation team, the preliminary investigation team pit, not the revolutionary pit, was in Kumasi on the 6th. So all the bits and pieces were falling in place. Now, talk about body bags. There were body bags at Sikamine.
Yeah, I mean, before I go to body bags, on the question of cordoning off the crash site and securing it. What have you learned? Because yes, the team got there, and when we got there, indeed, there were military officers, there was NADMO, there was police, there's fire service, yes, but people still had access to the site. I mean, overnight into the morning. What really happened there?
Well, I need now to, go back to my sources and say, okay, when you retrieved the bodies, the 8 bodies or body parts, did you leave a team overnight to secure the place, which is very critical. In the procedures that Bright is referring to, accident site, crime scene site, and indeed, let's say, I'm very careful not to attempt. I have a fairly good idea what might have happened, but that is not why we are here, and it's premature. Because if we are hasty, we might just end up, embarrassing some people. But the point is that the team that went there did the job for the day. I'm not sure whether the military planned that it was necessary to leave an element, whether a section, 2 sections, whatever the element is.
In the night,
Fortunately, this site, like Wing Commander said, is not savannah. We have all seen it is only accessible virtually along that footpath. And the least mistake one made, as your reporters have said, and you slipped, you were going downrange. So all that the security team, that's the cordon team, needed to do was not even to cordon off the whole area, but to identify the footpaths leading into and out of the crash zone, and then to secure them. Now, as of now, I cannot tell whether the military did that or they all withdrew and then the following day went back, because the security presence should also assist, the investigation team to continue with the forensic investigation. However, on news file I mentioned at the time that national security appeared to me and still appears to me to have played a key role.
Yeah.
Even if you withdrew the military, even if, an assumption that you withdrew them, and there were national security elements in and around the area, let's say under the circumstance, it was okay. But ideally, you should have had armed personnel.
And I can confirm that there was national security operatives there, a lot of them. In fact, they were led by the Deputy Ashanti Regional National Security Coordinator himself, who was on site.
So these are the facts that I think help a bit to contextualize anything you can call search and rescue and preliminary investigation team.
Yeah.
But in between the two, when you come to the nitty-gritty things that should have been done, you could see maybe there were a few gaps, a few lapses here and there. That all of us must not run away from, because, as Bright has been emphasizing, the idea is to ensure that, and in my paper I've said that the next time it happens, we must be ready, we must be prepared.
Yeah. And for me, that is the primary objective of this conversation, Bright.
I think,
and I'll come to our forensic analyst who's also joining us.
I think Colonel has done an excellent job of trying to balance 2 interests. One is nobody's here to throw the armed forces under the bus. And obviously, Kenya has an association with the armed forces. Wing Commander Sogbodjor has an association with the armed forces. It's necessarily in their interest, in their training, and their professionalism to be careful what they say about their own affiliation. That's why some of us who don't have those affiliations and have complete independence are also on the panel, so that the viewers can get a more balanced perspective. You understand what I'm saying? Because we did see right on the television sets, streaming on social media, evidence of unauthorized access. And I don't think anyone can dispute that. This is evidence that is heavily documented across multiple media. And I think even Colonel,
sure.
Please,
let him make his point.
I think Colonel does a really good job of trying to fill us in as to why those things happen, which is exactly what I was saying in the beginning. That we will look at what has happened, we'll benchmark that against what is the protocol, what are the set of procedures, rules, etc., as documented, and then someone who has insight can fill us in the gap and say, okay, this is why this has happened. I think the presentation that has been done by Colonel does that job excellently. The issue is national learning. We have a tendency in this country, I don't know why that is, that every time people are trying to be critical and to analyze a situation and the rest of it, we move quickly to end results, motives, things like that, instead of following the analysis first. And then if we have end results in mind, we have purposes in mind, what the framework in mind, the rest of it, we can do that. I have looked at, for instance, every single air investigation report, air accident or serious incident investigation report in this country, and carefully looked through it. It may surprise you to know that at least in 3 instances where this was important, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder was not in the state to assist the investigations. Volta River Aviation Authority investigations May 2014, Allied Air in 2012, and the latest Africa World Airlines 2023 incidents. In all of those cases, the so-called, what in colloquial terms we call the black box, was not in a state to be able to assist the investigations. My point is that we've had a problem that dates back to 2012 at the least. Because we don't discuss these things critically, they persist. In the case of the AWA, their findings were very clear as to why that data was not happening. What happens is that because the device is designed to overwrite a certain number of hours before the particular period in which you are looking at it, there is a requirement to program things in such a manner that when you recover, you don't allow it to keep recording. Otherwise, it will overwrite the data that is on there. This is something that, in my view, because we've had a problem for a decade, repeated twice, it's evidence that there is national learning around it. If we don't allow critical conversation, we claim that, it's theory or because the truth of the matter is that it's people like us who will surface it. This is not going to be surfaced publicly by people within the establishment. They have no incentive to do so. So if we don't allow a situation where there is open conversation, people are allowed to make critical comments when those are there, then we have problems. And in this case, my point is very simple. There are frameworks, there are standards that are set up that Ghana commits to. We have a national law. We have an airline that governs how search and rescue is done. All of these things are well laid out. If we still have evidence that there is unauthorized site access, we must say it. And then, in the course of the investigation and the rest of it, not only will they explain why that happened, they can make recommendations out going forward. We prevent those things. I don't see why there's anything whatsoever wrong with that posture.
And that's where we really must end this conversation about what are the key lessons from this incident going forward. Because as Colonel Sogbodjor says, we must learn the lesson and make sure it does not repeat. And you've cited examples, and I made the point about, Wing Commander also makes the point about this is not the first time we've had an incident like this. The key question is whether we've learned from the past and we are implementing the lessons in enhancing safety of our crewmen and passengers.
The issue is that every incident is peculiar to its nature. Search and rescue is activated. It's peculiar to the nature or the type of incident. And at the time I was flying, even though I did a training outside, black boxes are not coming to being. They are recent developments. So not every airplane who flies has a black box. But a Z9, they have, because they are not that old. And in the aircraft, if you possess it, everything is controlled by the hours you fly. So I didn't see why our couldn't have known that their black box had overflown the hours. It's a technical error. The board of inquiry will find it and give recommendations. So now we are waiting for the black box to be sent to China, or they come here to open it and decode it and see what went wrong. Then we can adduce the future reference that if anything comes, this is what you have to do. Every aircraft is different. They all fly, but they are not the same. So let's wait, let the black box either go or they come and open it. It's not something everybody can open and take information out of it. It's a manufacturer. The black box in this helicopter is different from the black box in another aircraft. It goes to manufacturer, or they send, if you even go back to Air India, Boeing was requesting the black box, and India said, no, we'll not give it to you. So they had to go to India and get it open, and then look at what happened.
No, I think eventually the black box in Air India's case was sent to the US.
Initially, it was open in India
Yeah, but
before
they couldn't
it was
do
sent.
it. So
What I'm saying that they'll have to come because no one can touch it.
in the
Except
case
the
of
manufacturer.
the May 24 incident for Delta River Authority, we sent it to Paris. It was sent to BEA.
Yeah.
BEA did the investigation. They found out that the last complete conversation was from 2010, and all the voices were Spanish. So I'm saying that we have to have a critical pusher in this country. When matters like this come, if there isn't enough public awareness and the rest of it, we don't learn the lessons because what's the incentive? So my goal as a public interest analyst is that if there's information that I've discovered that shed light on a matter, I will make sure enough people are aware because that puts pressure on the authorities. If, for instance, this incident that happened in 2012 and 2014 had somehow been, the lessons have been imbibed and reintegrated into the national protocols, my sense is that how you treat black box, your maintenance for the black box and those kinds of things will have improved. We wouldn't have seen the same incident happen again in 2023. Now we have a search and rescue incident where it's apparent to everybody who saw it that we had site containment challenges. We had problems which are now acknowledged by the security authorities because the regional minister is the head of the regional security entity. Yeah. He has announced and provided a reward for people to return as wreckage and debris back. I think it's only in Ghana that we would still try to pretend that we didn't have a situation.
But it's coming back again. I talked about the area, the vegetation, that if it had happened in Savannah area, search and rescue would have got it in a quick time. But in this forested area, I've been in Brazil too, they have this situation.
Yeah.
The trees are tall.
Yeah.
An aircraft it doesn't hang on the trees. It goes down.
Yeah.
But let me finish.
Yeah.
And Festus has also, it took time for the ground forces to go to the site.
Yeah, but Festus makes an important point that it's one that he will establish, the securing of the site, even after the first team had left there in around 5 o'clock when everybody was leaving.
No, I think even simpler than that. We saw people carrying tents when there were security people there.
Yes.
I mean, we can't try to ignore what we saw with our own eyes.
I'm not saying that there were people carrying
wreckage
situations are different.
When there were security people standing there, what has happened was that they didn't know.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
And importantly,
the NADMO, the fire service official and the rest of it, if they were part of the SRA architecture, the search and rescue architecture in this country, they would have been trained.
You know what?
One of the first things they would have done is that anybody carrying something away, they would have stopped the person, taken it out.
Take it back.
So to claim that we don't, something we all saw with our eyes.
Stop them.
And just a second.
Sorry?
Who was going to stop them?
The security services that were there.
It took time for them to get to the
site. Have you watched the footage?
Just a second.
Just a minute too.
Yeah.
Accident happens. It close to a village in the forest. They go there.
Yes.
Okay, maybe the fire had gone out. They start dismantling things. Who was going to control them?
Well, no. I'm saying that you watch the footage.
I've seen everything.
But I'm saying that the security, the people that were
security
to get there. After the time,
the trained search and rescue personnel there. Yeah, anybody who was part of the national...
The trained search and rescue, they've been trained there. How did they get there?
No. I'm saying that...
Are you going to draw them behind?
No. Listen to my point. I'm saying that we saw footage of people walking past
the
security forces.
It's not like a video right from the beginning to the end.
Okay. I want to do something.
Are you disputing the fact that the wreckage should not have been taken away?
They didn't take the whole wreckage.
They taking some of them.
I want to bring in a forensic pathologist.
No, but we need the whole thing to investigate.
They didn't touch the engine.
But we don't know.
Leave it to the black box.
But we don't know the fault.
Leave it to the black box.
We don't know the fault.
I want to bring in...
I said leave it to the black box.
How do we know it's all an engine problem? What if it's a rotor problem? What if something else?
But what drives the rotor?
But I'm saying that it's not even what if it's a structural problem?
No, why did it come down?
Wait, what if it's a structural problem?
Wait a minute, I'm talking about the rotor. Don't go on structure.
I want to focus on something that we've not discussed.
You are the one who said we don't know.
Stay with me. I want to bring Wing Commander.
Then why do we allow any part of it to go away?
Right, just a second. Let me bring in.
People that are part of the SAA.
Don't take them.
Let's bring in an expert who can help us.
What time did they get there?
Let's bring in the forensic pathologist.
We are talking about when the incident happened.
A second.
Before they go
and Wing Commander, just a second. Wing Commander, I want to bring in a forensic pathologist so that he can help her because that they take a second.
After they got in the body.
Just a second. It's important. I want Professor Paul Opoku Sampene is joining us. Hello, Prof, and apologies for holding you on.
But they are different disciplines. But they are different disciplines.
Yes, Brighton Wing Commander. Just a second. Brighton Wing Commander. Wing Commander. Wing Commander. Just a second. I want to speak to the forensic pathologist, Professor Paul Opoku Sampene. And Prof, apologies for holding you this long, but I wanted to understand. The what really happened, and so hopefully from Colonel Festus Sogbodjor, from Wing Commander and Bride, we have a sort of a bigger appreciation of what happened that day. From a forensic pathologist's point of view, what's your own assessment of what we all saw play out live before us, of what happened? Not the crash. I mean, post the incident and securing the site and investigations that happened. Give me your thoughts. Prof, please unmute for me. Hello, Prof. Prof, please unmute for me.
Yeah, I
can hear you live and clear. I'm grateful that
I'm saying that
grateful for your patience
and my condolences.
Yes,
my sincere condolences to the bereaved family, and also extend my greetings to my very good friend Colonel Sogbodjor. And Bright, I've heard him speak on several platforms, and then the Wing Commander, first time I'm meeting him. So I'm so happy to be part of such a august discussion. But then I will start my own presentation by stating that it seems from the discussion so far, it seems you are reducing the whole thing to technical fault and so on and so forth. But we haven't thought of the human part in terms of what could have been the state or the health state of the pilot, the co-pilot, and so on and so forth when the flight was in motion. Did we actually think of that? So if you reduce the argument or the discussion to black box, and then the technical fault, we may end up losing the whole fact here. If I recall, my paper that I wrote, latent medical conditions of drivers involved in road traffic accidents, where some drivers may have some latent conditions like hypertension, diabetes, epilepsy, and so on and so forth, and be driving. And so some of these things get themselves involved in accident and would think that it's probably the fault of the cars. It will not be so always. So that is one thing I just want us to draw the attention to. And that is where, when the accident or the disaster happened, how it was handled, where experts were not called. Probably the experts that were called were those who were involved in probably looking at how the plane was assembled or whatever, or how the disaster occurred. As a forensic pathologist, like you rightly said, if I had been or anybody had been at the accident scene or the disaster scene, even the way the victims were lying on the floor would speak a lot to us. And so that is very, very important when such disaster. I've never seen any such disaster in Ghana before, but I have had experience of working with some companies or some hospitals where a disaster of this nature occurred. And so I believe that we should also consider the fact that human beings were the ones who were managing the flight. Just as the Wing Commander says, until recently, most flights did not have what we call the black box. So we don't always look at the black box or any other fault alone and then conclude that those could be the reason for the cause of the
and that is why the preservation of the site for you as a forensic pathologist would have been very important.
Exactly. But you see, that is a country where we in that level are not needed. Basically, that's what I've seen. we are not needed in the sense that when such a thing comes in, we tend to learn so much on technical issues where other things that could also help in the investigations are not actually employed. Otherwise, some of us were around, or some of us are still around, and they could have actually contacted some of us.
To be more specific, from everything that we've watched and now know, from a forensic pathologist point of view, what would have been ideal in terms of the crash site?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That you see, there was no rush in getting the bodies from where they were. Yes, I understand that in Ghana, because of the way we see accidents and we see human beings, we always want to help. And I usually accept it because that is how we are brought up, that is how we are made up. So and I accept it. And so there was no rush in actually picking those bodies. In the sense that if you look at the way they were carried in cocoa sack, as Ken Sogbodjor once said, cocoa bottle, which is not the best of things to do. So those things we could have actually handled it in a very, very good professional manner and in a very serious, humane way, where we will not be selling some of our, or drying some of our dirty linen in public until the media, the communication system came out to tell us that those things should be taken out of the media space. But of course, the harm had already been done. So for me, as a pathologist, maybe we may be losing a lot of information if we try to only concentrate on the mechanical aspect of the plane or the helicopter. That is going to also be a problem for us if you want to get deep down into the bottom of whatever happened. So the harm had been done, and then somebody will say we can't cry over spilt milk. But of course, it's a lesson. I mean, curve, and that at any given time when it happens again, which of course we are not praying that such a thing happens, but if it does, then we should know how to handle it, because our rescue system, our rescue method in Ghana always is very, very poor, because even if you go to in just common accident scene, the way people handle the victims of the accident, some of them even contribute to the death of these patients, these accident victims. The way they pull them from the rubbles and so on and so forth, most of them will lead into death when in actual fact they could have been saved if the body had been handled in the way that is professionally done. And so that is how probably as the conversation goes on, maybe I will have to give some advice and some suggestion as to how best we can go about it.
And we're just wrapping up now. I want to come to Professor Sogbodjor quickly. Wrap up for me on so far, what are the key lessons that you're beginning to draw? I know there's a lot of moving parts here. We're nowhere near trying to resolve this yet. It's investigations, but based on what you've learned so far, and we'll come back to this once we get a bit more from the Ghana forces. But immediately, what are some of the key lessons we should be drawing already that you may expect to be in any report?
If you may permit me, don't let me address the lessons learned, but let me try and disabuse the minds of Ghanaians about some misconceptions that we've had. So let's start from the security of the crash site. As we're talking, I got messages from reliable sources within the military that from the 6th, the military plus national security plus police plus or in conjunction with the assembly have been on the scene. You recall that the villagers were asking that the military should allow them to go to their farms because the military is blocking the passages or the paths to the farms. The second point is that, you see, if an accident happens 0953, say 1000, and your security elements get to the zone at 1400 hours, that is 4 hours of initiative ceded to the local population. So the military was faced, the security services, both search and rescue and others, were faced with a challenge of regaining control over the situation. Because for 4 hours, the locals were taking anything they wanted from the place. And I've tried to explain why it was not possible for the security services to have been at the crash site immediately after it happened. And I've made a comparison with Atiwa, which took 3 days before we found the crash zone. My last point, without going into the details, is that there are operational decisions different from political decisions. RedSec is a quasi-political security structure. But when you get on the ground, like Professor Sampene is saying, the essence is not to hastily or speedily remove the bodies from where they had fallen. The important thing is to get the forensic scientists to come and take their time and photograph all the pieces of, exhibits that they have strewn around the area, including those hanging on treetops. But it looks like the command and control, professional, operational, was not exercised by the security forces, but rather by the political actors. And in the process, there is no way that we can reconstruct the crash site.
That's an important point.
The plane parts have left. The bodies have left. All manner of movements in and out of the area have also happened. Indeed, the rain probably would have fallen again. So that would have obliterated a lot of the evidence. And I think these are some of the lessons that we should be learning. We must differentiate between political authority and operational command. The two are not the same. And I don't want to hold brief. Yes, the regional minister did well. He must be commended. But his leadership role should have been in the area of administrative support, not operational decision-making.
Okay. Colonel, thank you very much, Brian.
Three quick points. One is that if you listen to Professor Sempini carefully, what we've learned from there is that this is a multidisciplinary process. This is not something that only a specific type of expertise can dominate. That's the point I was trying to make. That just by looking at the way the body is lying down, it speaks to something about evidence. So anytime we have second instances in Ghana, there are some people that purport to suggest that a multidisciplinary approach is by itself wrong. People that bring different expertise, whether it's somebody who is an ICT expert who can look at the device and look at the way it was configured, or somebody that is a medical practitioner of one type or the other who can look at bodies, people that may have done mental health evaluations of pilots. There's so many different kinds of expertise involved. That's number one, and that's very important. And when we have these kinds of conversations, we need to have the humility to allow different perspectives and the rest of it to integrate so we get the best comprehensive analysis. The second thing that I think is very critical that has come out from all of this is that the international standards, like Kendall just said, are important because we are a developing country.
You mentioned the 30 minutes before and after.
We are a developing country. So as a developing country, you need to benchmark. If you say that because you're a developing country, you have practical constraints, you have no benchmarks, you don't develop. This whole notion that we have to improve comes about partly because there are global standards, there are global benchmarks, the rest of we can move towards there. We were talking about black boxes, CVRs, etc., a moment ago. The first invention of a black box was as far back as the 1950s, 1957, by Dr. Warren. The first regulator to demand that you must have a black box in a commercial aircraft to fly was Australia in 1963. The reason why it looks as if this is something new is because it takes time to get to us. The question is, as the world is changing very fast with AI and all of these things, how long can we maintain those gaps? We don't have that luxury. There is this GATS framework, this Global Aeronautical Distress Framework, that is supposed to make it quicker for you to identify, because they know all of this. People that have studied this in different jurisdictions know that getting to the crash sites quicker saves a whole lot of evidence, which makes it much more viable to determine the cause of the crash. So GATS is going to make it possible for ELT transmission to be picked up by satellite, relayed to the MCC. You know, and you combine with GPS data and other forms of data, know exactly where the incident occurred, and then you can speed up response. In Ghana, we've been saying we've been doing it. 2020, we said we are going to meet the 2023 timeline and the rest of it. We have to pay attention to these things that are international, that's changing the standards, etc., etc. And then when we discuss them, we can't say that because these are theoretical benchmarks or these are manuals, etc., they don't reflect the practical reality, so we don't take them into consideration. My view is that we must take them into consideration. That's part of the strategy of becoming a more sophisticated country.
Commander.
Yeah, much as I agree with you. You see, every nation has its own sovereignty. If you are flying within controlled airspace, satellites are there are other things, reporting points. But when you are flying a local flight within your territorial, these things are difficult to come by.
Are there any key lessons for you that you may be looking for?
I just told you, their flight, you don't just take off and fly. About a certain height, you have to go to a controlled airspace. And once you get there, you are monitored. You have reporting points, one like a plane takes off to go to London from Accra. You cross Kumasi, Tamale, Ouagadougou, Tamaracet, and then you go to Tripoli or Benghazi, cross over the Mediterranean. Then either France or Spain will take you and push you. We don't have it in local area. And these things which governance is talking about, it is not compulsory unless you are within the flight corridors. Then you have to be mandatory, all these things. And this is a local flight. What I felt that we should find out, what happened to the airplane to lose height? And no pilot would take off and say, I'm going to fly on treetops. Suddenly, even the mandatory separation is about 1,000 feet. What we treat you have in Ghana about 1,000 or 2,000 feet for a pilot to fly into it. And the captain was all weather, Master Green. Trained locally here and did all the other courses in the United States. So, to me, we should find out what happened.
Okay, so that's one of the things you expected.
Yes.
At the back of the investigation. Wing Commander, thank you. Fascinating conversation indeed. Fascinating. Bright. I'm grateful. Colonel Professor Sogbodjor and Prof. Thank you very much. This conversation we'll return to because down the line we'll be briefed. We'll get further information. When we get wiser, we'll return because we must ask the questions until we get the answers. Enjoy the rest of your evening.